All right, back with another tier list here. Before we get into it, I have to set up that I have changed the tiers. Last week there was a lot of controversy over me putting the Bengals into playoffs for sure tier, but in that segment also saying that I'm not sure if they make the playoffs. So kind of realized I probably need to rename some of these tiers. I actually broke that tier up into two different tiers. There's now the dark horse tier and the feels like playoffs tier. So that's where I'm going to have that. So hopefully that can help clarify where I put some of these teams. But yeah, let's just get into it. Starting off with the Tennessee Titans, who, I had been keeping in the scrappy tier, and I still feel like there are aspects of this team that I do like. But I mean, if you're getting quarterback play this rough, quite frankly, this is a bad football team, and they're in the bad tier. I just think that that's fair right now with how they've played. I think there's potential for them to climb some tiers. I don't know how many tiers they're going to climb, but I think there is potential. As of right now, though, it's hard to feel too optimistic about this team. The Dolphins, who did not play this week, were in bad tier last week, are going to stay there. Also, I should mention, I changed this was the solid, there was a still good tier. I've changed that to solid. Still kind of the same thing, just different terminology. The Jets, who played tonight, they were in the, I had them in the still good tier, so now they're in the solid tier. I still think there's again, we'll get into it next week, I suppose, after they play against the Bills. Could be a huge game for them. The Bengals, who I had in the playoffs for sure tier, just brought that up. Now, where do I put them? They beat the Giants, and whatever you want to say about that win, about the Giants, whatever, their defense did look better. I think the offense kind of sputtered for a bit. I think uncharacteristically didn't have its best day. It's an underwhelming one. I mean, this Bengals team doesn't look fully right. I still think they feel like a playoff team with just how good Joe Burrow is and how good Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are. I'm going to put them in feels like playoffs. You can't put them in the top two tiers just because of how bad this defense has been, but a big step up. We'll see if it can continue. Cleveland Browns are another they're a bad football team. I mean, they lose by 4, and everyone's talking about, wow, what a horrible job by the Eagles only beating Cleveland by 4, and that was with a blocked field goal touchdown in the mix. I mean, it's a rough situation right now. Again, another team that, like the Titans, I think could do better if they had a different quarterback, but doesn't seem like that's going to happen anytime soon. And then we have Jacksonville, who I had been putting in the scrappy tier as well for a while, just because I feel like they have shown flashes. And again, my take kind of all season has been, while Lawrence is the quarterback, so he's going to get all the blame, there are a lot of bigger issues here than just Trevor Lawrence. But at the same time, he can't fix all those issues, and this is a bad football team right now. Next up is the Detroit Lions, who, had one of those games where it was a win that didn't feel like a win, losing their star edge rusher in a situation where kind of their biggest position of weakness was edge rusher depth. But it's like, well, you at least have this superstar player leading the league in sacks and pressures. Now, all of a sudden, he has been, he's out for the season, is what it seems like it's going to happen. So, because of that hurts them. They're still a Super Bowl contender, though. This offense is rolling right now. The defense still played well after the Hutchinson injury. You do have to, it's something you have to pay attention to, is how well will this defense play. It has had its bad moments, like in Seattle, or against Seattle, I should say. Was it in Seattle? I forget. Either way, against Seattle, it had its bad moments. But still, there's so much to like about this team. How can you not have them as, maybe even the favorites in the NFC, certainly contenders, but they're not favorites. There's a team that they're underdogs to this upcoming week, the Vikings. What a good test for those two teams, as winner might be just the consensus favorite in the NFC. Had the Vikings in Super Bowl contender last year, or last week, not last year, but last week I had them in Super Bowl contenders. They had a bye week, so they stay here. Tampa Bay, who I had in the playoffs for sure tier, which again, that's either one of these two tiers. I'm splitting it up now. Can I put them in dark horse or feels like playoffs? What feels like? I'm going to put them in dark horse. Sure, maybe a homer take being a Tampa Bay fan, but I don't know. Mayfield's playing at such a high level right now, currently leading the league in touchdowns by a pretty good margin. He has a 3-touchdown lead on the next closest guy. also second in the league in passer rating. Now, those are stats I only use when they benefit my favorite quarterback, but even without that, this offense is rolling. It's tied for the most points in the NFL, and while it's, I think, more advanced numbers aren't quite as good, they're still like top 5 in all those categories. So, yeah, I mean, again, doing a lot of things really well. Tampa Bay is right now. Defense not being one of them, but the defense played great outside of a horrible 5-minute stretch, when really that wasn't even the defense's fault. There was, yes, they gave up 27 points, but there were multiple short fields and a punt return touchdown. I mean, you take those out of the equation, this was kind of a dominant performance by the Tampa Bay defense, even if the box score might not show that. So, sure, I don't know. Well, let's have some fun. Let's put them there. In San Francisco, able to get on track against Seattle. Seattle made it interesting towards the end, but San Francisco able to win. I'm still going to put them in dark horse. They just, again, their highs have been so high, like it's impossible to not view the Niners as a team that could win the Super Bowl. But just given the fact that they're still 3-3, it feels unfair to put a 3-3 team in the top tier just right now. At a certain point, the games have to matter, right? I feel like it's college football all of a sudden. That's just kind of how I view them right now. Then we have the Atlanta Falcons next in the mix, who were able to get a win against the Panthers. All right, am I willing to put them also in dark horse? I don't want to. This is kind of the weird thing where I talk myself into Tampa Bay being in dark horse, and then I feel like I have to put the Falcons in dark horse as well, because I feel like those are kind of on similar terms. But honestly, like, yeah, they should be dark horse. The defense is starting to concern me a little bit, because the defense, usually really good, has not played great these past couple weeks. Even against Carolina, they gave up some stuff. Did have some big plays go the other way, though. So at least if you can get big plays, that can help. But this offense is just rolling right now. Bijan and Tyler Algier, the best running back duo in the league. Kirk Cousins playing at a high level. They're blocking very well for him, and they're getting all these weapons involved. They're finally getting all these weapons involved for like the first time ever. So, sure. Atlanta has earned the dark horse tier, in my opinion. They've played very well. And so has Baltimore, who is going to stay in Super Bowl contenders. Again, you keep winning against good teams, beating the Commanders in, not dominant fashion. Commanders were able to make some plays, but convincing fashion. Baltimore felt like the team that was going to win that whole game, and they were able to close it out. So being able to win a game like that, this offense is just rolling right now. How can you not have them in Super Bowl contenders? And good bounce back game for their defense against a really good offense. The Bears are interesting. Can I put the Bears? Can I bump? I had them into still good tier, which is now the solid tier last week. But if Caleb Williams is going to play like this, I mean, they feel like a playoff team. That's where I have them as of right now. I think that I still want to see them against maybe tougher competition. I heard the stat that every team they've beaten this season has exactly one win on their resume. So, sure, but at the end of the day, you play who you play, and they've looked good in these games too, right? They looked good against Jacksonville. Sure, it's Jacksonville, but they looked great in this game. So that's what you like to see. Williams continuing to improve week after week, and his defense has been good all season. Like, sure, absolutely that team can make the playoffs. The Cowboys, I don't think can. I've had them in this. I had them in a solid tier, and I don't know. I guess, should I still keep them there? I'm gonna think about it. I'll set them here now. I could change my mind just because, like, They do still have pieces offensively, but they've been getting crushed by every great team they've played. A horrible loss to the Detroit Lions. I still think there's some pieces here, but it definitely doesn't feel like a playoff team. I'm going to keep them here. Maybe this is being too... Usually I'm a Cowboys hater. Maybe I'm being a bit too generous right now, because I do just think that they're a team that can't really hang with the big dogs, but maybe can still beat some of the worst teams. So I'll say solid. You could certainly talk me into scrappy. Next up, we have the Houston Texans, who I feel like I almost invented the dark horse tier for them, because I don't know if I can quite put them in Super Bowl contenders yet, because they still have had some kind of weird wins. But hey, 20-point victory over the New England Patriots. I don't care who you're playing. That's still impressive. I still want to see it a little bit more. They play Green Bay next week. They could earn their way into the Super Bowl contenders tier. The issue is, like, they just keep consistently showing that, like, they've done enough to maybe be in the top tier, but they haven't had a single week where I'm like, oh yeah, they should definitely be in the top tier, which is why I keep, like, putting them here. again, a team that could win their way into Super Bowl contenders here, because they have had some impressive wins, like they beat Buffalo, all that. But, yeah, for here, this is where I'm going to keep them. Then we have the Colts, who, hey, I'll give the Colts credit. They keep winning football games. That's definitely optimistic to see. I still don't know how much I love this team. The defense did finally have a solid day here in this one. I think scrappy feels fair, and now that I'm thinking about it, the Cowboys are also scrappy. Sorry, that I have to put them there. Because I feel pretty similar about the Colts and Cowboys when I think about it. Colts do have some offensive pieces. Interested in seeing what they do with Anthony Richardson, and they're 3-3. They're in the hunt in the AFC, but I still don't know if I love this roster. The Rams, who did not play this week, I had them in the scrappy tier last week, so keeping them here as well. And then the Chargers, they're another feels like playoffs team. Like, listen, they have this old school approach of run the ball, a lot, all that stuff. They definitely took their foot off the gas in the fourth quarter against Denver, but it's working. It's really working, and I thought Herbert played really well in this one on top of it. So if this is what they're getting, this feels like a playoff team right now, especially in the AFC that has some great teams at the top, but then is kind of for the 5, 6, and 7 seeds, they're all kind of up in the air. Chargers could, definitely in position to take one. I believe they're in a playoff spot as of right now. So there you go. Raiders aren't very good, which is a bummer because when the Raiders are good, it's fun, but they're just not a good team right now. I had them in the scrappy tier last year. They drop a tier to bad. It's not a great situation here. Aiden O'Connell, to his credit, it's going up against the Steelers defense. Only so much you can do there, but did not play a great game of football, I thought. Certainly was not all on him. A couple calls could have gone the Raiders' way, would have maybe changed things, but I still don't think it would have changed enough. Washington is next on the list, who I had in the playoffs for sure tier, which is kind of what these two have, emerged into. Do I put them in feels like playoffs or dark horse? I'm sorry, Washington fans, as much as I love this offense, as much as I love Jaden Daniels, I'm keeping them in feels like playoffs for now. The defense, which has started to play better, for sure, there's still issues here, and I still just can't quite put them in the dark horse tier. They're close, though. They definitely could get into that tier as things progress, but for now, feels like playoffs, feels fair. Chiefs had a bye week. They were in Super Bowl contenders tier. They're going to remain there. The Saints, man, they had a great quarter. They had a great 5 minutes against Tampa Bay. Other than that, I still think this defense has pieces, but it gave up 51. I guess technically there was their offense gave up 7 of those points, but still not a great showing against admittedly a very good Tampa Bay offense, but still. I think I expected more out of the Saints defense than what we saw, especially the run defense, which Tampa Bay hasn't been able to run the ball on anyone. They looked like the Ravens out there. Spencer Rattler came in, and I thought he did okay. Actually, I played all right, especially for a guy playing in his first game. But there's so many issues offensively, injury-wise now. They lost Chris Olave. Hopefully, he'll be back soon, but you never know with these head injuries, which are always scary. I'm going to put them in the scrappy tier right now. Drop them a tier from they were in the solid tier last week. A lot of teams that were in the solid tier last week are moving around, so that might be a tier without too much teams in it, including the Giants, who were in the solid tier last week. I was like, okay, Giants, I'm buying in a little bit, and every time you buy in, they give you a reason not to. Defensive line's still very good for the Giants. Daniel Jones, though, just like I kind of talked about it last week, he has this just inconsistency where his worst games, you're like, how did this guy ever get that big contract? Even his best games, you're not like, oh, he clearly deserved it. But, on these games, you're like, what was going on? Wasn't a great game for him. Certainly was not all his fault. They need Malik Neighbors back, but for now, and now they've got some offensive line injuries, looks like. So, yeah, scrappy feels fair. The Eagles, who I had been kind of higher on than I think a lot of other people, I had put them in the playoffs for sure tier last week, but I think I'm coming around on what everyone else has been on. I think that this is a team that I'll put them in a solid tier. I still think there are some nice pieces on this roster, But now to have Jordan Mailata got banged up in this one, so that doesn't help. Again, you take out the blocked field goal touchdown, this team does look better, but I don't know. You have your coach arguing with people on the sidelines, which I sort of joked about on the podcast. I think I'm pro arguing with people on the sidelines. Why not? If they can say something to you, why can't you say something back? I don't mind that. But granted, I'm sure that maybe it would have been better if you're focused on the team. Maybe is what people would probably be more wanting to say about Sirianni, and just in general. There's just too many weird things with this team. They're so A.J. Brown dependent. Hey, not a bad guy to depend on, but I think that there's still. When I was kind of holding out hope for the Eagles, saying, well, they're so A.J. Brown dependent, but once they get him back, they should be good again. It hasn't fully worked great through week one. I wouldn't write them off just yet. That's the one thing I'll say. A lot of people are writing the Eagles off. I don't think they're dead yet. I think they could still win the division. That's still in play, but they got to start playing better. They just do. The Steelers, hey, Steelers finding ways to win games. I put them in the playoffs for sure tier. Last week, they win a game against the Raiders. I got to put them in. Feels like playoffs, which is the Steelers, right? I don't know what their ceiling is right now with this Justin Fields experiment, but so far it's working. Again, they're another team maybe a bit too dependent on a receiver in George Pickens. Not a bad guy to be to depend on either, but just there's kind of some issues there offensively. I thought Fields made some really good plays though, especially when plays broke down, able to do stuff post snap to kind of move the needle and get them the victory here. And their defense continues to just play fantastic. Next up is the Denver Broncos, a disappointing loss for the Broncos, who I had put into playoffs for sure tier. Basically every team was in playoffs for sure last week. That's why I had to make the tiers a little bit different. A disappointing loss. I didn't think the offense had a very good day. It wasn't all Nick's fault, but some of it was in the first three quarters. I'll give Nick a lot of credit. He played very well in that fourth quarter. It gave them a chance to come back and win. Listen, they would have needed an onside kick. Doesn't happen too often, but at least they had that chance down the stretch to try and come back and win. So because of this, I think the solid tier feels right. I still think there's just too many issues offensively for me to feel great about them being a playoff team as of right now, but they could still get in. I'm not saying that they can't get in because the AFC is a bit weak and this defense still is loaded. I just can't say oh yeah, they're definitely in playoffs. They feel more bubble playoffs to me as of right now. So that's just where I'm at with Denver. But again, I think they can get back to one of these top tiers. We'll see what happens. The Packers have a really dominant performance against the Arizona Cardinals, who listen, we'll talk about the Cardinals in a second, but Jordan Love, again, this is the thing with Jordan Love. He's going to have his lackluster games. He's not going to play perfect all 17 games of the season, but this is why you gave him the contract, because he can have games like this where he was, I thought, really good right there. I think there's still too much inconsistency for me to feel great about putting them in their dark horse tier right now, but they feel like a playoff team for sure. And again, if they can rack together a few more of these types of games, and really, if Jordan Love can rack together a few more of these types of games, then I'll feel good about them being higher in a higher tier. For now, hey, they play Houston next week. If they can beat them, there's a very good chance I put them in the dark horse tier. For now, I'm going to put them in feels like playoffs. The Panthers are a team that, they made some plays here in this one against Atlanta. They were able to move the ball a bit. I don't know. Is it crazy to say that I'm going to put them in the scrappy tier? This offense is playing all right. The offense is playing all right. Yeah, it's crazy because this defense is really bad. So sorry, Panthers fans, I wanted to put you up a tier. I just can't do it. This defense just is giving up so many points at this point. Andy Dalton, one of the interceptions he had was just a baffling decision. It was one of those weird plays where the broadcast, I liked how the broadcast shot this game. There was a lot of sort of more wide shots so you could see down the field, which was fun. So they're showing down the field. We see Andy Dalton looking down the field. It's clearly not open, and he just fires it anyway. I think that might have been a replay actually, but either way, it was a baffling decision there by Dalton. Then we have the Cardinals, who, again, this team just frustrates me because I keep wanting to buy in to Arizona. When they have their good games, I'm like, I talked about it on the podcast, but the good games, you're not just like, oh my God, what a game by this team. You're like, this is a good team, and you were an idiot for ever doubting this team. Look at how good this team is. They just beat San Francisco. They just blew out the Rams. Clearly, this is a good team. What were you thinking saying they weren't? and then they just go back to stinking for a couple weeks. And part of it is Kyler is very inconsistent, but also, I mean, losing Marvin Harrison Jr., that's going to affect the game plan, and I still think they need some pieces defensively. They're scrappy. They're a scrappy team. There's things to like about this roster. And maybe you could argue they should be in the solid tier, but as of right now, they just have too many of these weeks and not enough of the beating the 49ers weeks. That's kind of how I view them right now. The Bills, who still haven't played yet, they play Monday nights, so I had them, but it's interesting, I still have to make a decision on them because I had them in playoffs for sure. Do I put them in feels like playoffs or do I put them in dark horse? I'm going to say dark horse. They have Josh Allen. They still, even with all their issues, they still have had some really good offensive performances, and we'll see if they can beat the Jets, who I have two tiers lower. We'll see if there's a big mix-up if the Jets can pull off that victory. Seattle, next on the list, which, man, what a disappointing 3 weeks they've had, huh? After starting 3-0, are now 3-3 and haven't looked great in some of these games. Very disappointing, losing to the 49ers here. That wasn't that bad, losing to the 49ers, but again, the slide continues. I'm going to put them in solid. I mean, as of right now, that's just how I view them. I can't view this as like, oh, they're clearly a playoff team the way we thought after 3 weeks. And even those first 3 weeks, looking back, they weren't exactly blowing out kind of low level of competition, so that's a little tough. The Patriots, speaking of low level of competition, sorry, Kyle. Okay, listen, this team isn't very good. They do struggle. Drake May makes this team far more watchable, and I would say better. I think he had a solid performance. Still got blown out in the game. If you're in the bad tier and you get blown out, it's very unlikely for me to bump you up a tier. A lot more watchable with Drake May. Who knows? Maybe playing Jacksonville, if they can look good in that one, maybe they can get bumped up to scrappy. But for now, that is where I have them. That is where I have every team. After week 6, we are a third of the way done of the NFL season already. I know, it happens in an instant. But some fun football to talk about. Big game Monday night, so that should be fun. But yeah. Let me know what you think of this tier list in the comments below. Do you still think I'm too high on the Cincinnati Bengals? Let me know. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.